Hi, the other day I was on Facebook Marketplace and I found a couple Condor upright motorcycle dollies for sale for a good price. Thought I'd buy them and thought I'd take a chance to compare them to the motorcycle dollies I've been building out of Harbor Freight sidestand dollies with a Condor style chock off of eBay. The good news about the Harbor Freight sidestand dolly with the Condor clone chock off of eBay. Brand new, you would put one of these together for about 160 bucks. Typically, I buy the dolly off of Craigslist used, and the most I ever pay is 50 bucks, pay as low as 30 bucks. So typically, I'm putting one of these together for $125 or less. The Condor on the other side is right now $490 delivered from Condor. That's a special discounted off from $540, and you really don't see these used very often. If you saw one used, you'd probably pay somewhere around $250 to $300, maybe even a little more, since they're so rare. Frankly, one of the ways I get a lot of a lot of Harbor Freight dollies is people get them, they find they're too short for their bikes. So we'll talk about how long and short these things are. Motorcycle sitting on the Condor right now has a 55-inch wheelbase. You can see there's lots of room behind it. This dolly is actually lengthenable by another 6 inches. So clearly, if you've got a long bike, this will do really well. The Harbor Freight sidestand dolly, by the time I put the chock on it, this is a 55-inch wheelbase bike too, and you can see that it's much closer to the end of the dolly. That basically turns out to limit these to probably about 60, 62-inch wheelbase bikes. Just straight out as a measurement, the Condor, even in its shortest position, will fit a bike that has about a 12-inch longer wheelbase. So again, if you really have a long wheelbase bike, this is a great dolly. So why don't we go over and take a look at kind of what these look side by side like without a bike on them. The first thing I think you'll notice is the actual chocks themselves are essentially the same. They do an equally good job of holding a front wheel. They're equally adjustable. So both have pins that you can remove and put the cradle farther forward or farther back, depending to accommodate different sized wheels. You can see these are lined up. You can see how much longer the Condor is than the Harbor Freight dolly. And then what I'll do is I'll show this angle. The Harbor Freight dolly is much narrower. So there's actually about a 10 to 6 inch difference in width. The Condor dollies are wider at the rear than they are at the front, whereas the Harbor Freight dollies are the same length. In practice, people always worry about the Harbor Freight dollies being too narrow to be stable. They really are plenty stable. You would have to really be doing something stupid to have a bike in one of these dollies and to knock the bike over, or knock the entire dolly assembly over. They're plenty stable. The other thing about them is you'll notice that there's a big difference in the size of wheels. The Harbor Freight dolly has much smaller wheels. Condor dolly has much larger wheels. The good news is the Condor dolly rolls really easily. So easily that if the dolly isn't locked down, if you bump into the dolly, bike on the dolly will move. The Harbor Freight wheels make it so these are they're harder to move. I think they're acceptably easy to move, but they're not that easy to move. The good news about this is, without being locked down, these dollies, if you bump into them, they really don't move. You have to want to move them to move them. The other piece I'll show is the lockdown pieces. What you see is, you see the Condor dolly has these screw down points, whereas the Harbor Freight dolly has a paddle set up where all you do is you flip the paddle and that makes the foot go down and that locks it. It's easy to do these with your feet. The Condor dollies, you actually have to screw it down right over it. You can't do that with your feet. And unlocking it means you have to go around the sides and screw it off. The Condor is much more stable. So stable, in fact, that people like to ride on and off these. You can see the two pieces in front of this dolly. Those are the riser height assemblies that are optional, so that you can attach those to the sides of the dolly, and basically that'll enable you to ride on the dolly, and even though it's higher off the ground, it will give you a place to put your feet down so you can get on and off a bike. It also gives you a nice place if the dolly is trying to move around while you're trying to get the bike off the dolly. You can prop your foot against it and basically use that as leverage. Functionally, that means that if you want to ride on and off a dolly, the Condor really works well. It's set up for that, and it works well at that. The Harbor Freight, I don't know that I would do that. It really is two things. It's a channel style, so it's narrow. So that means the alignment of the tires makes a much bigger difference in getting it into the dolly correctly. And then the other piece is the locking mechanism for the feet simply is not as solid as the Condor is. But in the end, what's interesting is it really depends upon what kind of bike you have. So when you look at this and you look at kind of how tightly packed my motorcycles are, the extra length of the Condor really ends up meaning it uses much more space. The extra width also actually means that these dollies use more space. And given the notion of having an upright dolly is to maximize your storage space, that's an issue for me. The fact that you actually have to screw the things down and then otherwise the dolly will move if you bump into it also presents a problem for me. If you look at how tightly packed things are, there isn't a lot of room for me to bend down and screw dollies down to make them not move. And when I'm trying to pull bikes out, obviously I'm trying to get between them. I will bump them, and the Condors would lead me pushing the bikes into each other. The Harbor Freights, I never really lock them down unless I'm loading or unloading them because they simply are stable enough to not move. So in the end, what you choose to use depends upon how big the bike you have that you're putting onto the dolly. It also depends upon how much you want to spend. And lastly, it depends upon how tight you're trying to pack bikes in. For me, even though these Condor dollies from the quality viewpoint are just absolutely beautiful, far much more beautiful than the Harbor Freight dollies are, I'll be moving these Condor dollies on because they just don't suit my purpose as well. I hope you found this informative, and if you have, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.